Imagine stepping off a plane, your body still humming with the adrenaline of war, only to find the people you love most treat you like a stranger in your own home. Captain Lila Hawthorne, a 29-year-old intelligence officer, had survived a year in the chaos of Syria, dodging danger and saving lives. She dreamed of her family's brownstone in Georgetown, D.C., a place that once meant safety. But as she stood on the threshold, her combat boots gritty with desert dust, the air inside hit her like a slap, sharp with lavender air freshener, not the warm scent of home. Her heart sank. This wasn't the reunion she'd clung to through sleepless nights in Aleppo. Lila's mother, Beatrice, glided from the parlor, her tailored navy dress impeccable, her smile a polished mask. "Lila, darling," she said, her voice smooth as silk but cold as marble. "Please change out of that. We're hosting a gala tonight. It's not the vibe." That was her uniform, earned through blood and grit, dismissed as a stain on Beatrice's perfect world. Before Lila could respond, her younger sister, Penelope, swept down the staircase in a shimmering gown, her lips curling. "Good Lord, Lila, you look like the janitor." The housekeeper nearby flinched, but Beatrice's eyes gleamed with quiet approval. Lila's chest tightened, the sting of rejection sharper than any battlefield wound. If this hits home, if you've ever felt like your sacrifices were swept aside, hit that like button, drop a comment with your story, and share this video. Subscribe to Chosen Revenge for more tales of resilience that'll keep you hooked. The dining room was a stage, its long walnut table gleaming under a chandelier's glow. Lila was relegated to a corner seat, next to an elderly cousin who mumbled into her soup, her name absent from the golden boss seating chart. Her father, Cornelius, a defense contractor with a voice like gravel, gave her a curt nod before diving into talk of Pentagon deals with the congressman. Penelope, radiant at the table's heart, was toasted for her charity auction, while Lila's fiancé, Theo, was praised for his new law firm partnership. Lila sat, a ghost in her own home, her uniform a silent scream of her worth. When the congressman's wife, a kind-eyed woman named Clara, turned to Lila, asking about Syria, a flicker of hope sparked. "It must have been intense," Clara said. Lila opened her mouth, but Beatrice's laugh sliced through, bright and brittle. "Oh, Clara, it's all bombs and dust. Let's not bore everyone. Penelope's planning a Napa Valley retreat." The table moved on, Lila's story buried under chatter of wine tours. She sat rigid, West Point discipline holding her together, but inside, she was unraveling. This wasn't just neglect, it was erasure. Later, Lila climbed the stairs to her old room, craving a shred of familiarity. She pushed open the door and her breath caught. Her sanctuary was gone, replaced by Penelope's shrine. Racks of designer dresses, shelves of Louboutin heels, and a velvet-lined jewelry case glowing under soft lights. In a shadowed corner, a cardboard box sat, scrawled with Lila's junk in Beatrice's precise cursive. Lila knelt, her hands shaking as she opened it. Inside were her service medals, a folded American flag from her unit, and a photo of her squad, their faces dusty but alive under a Syrian sun. This wasn't a box, it was a grave for her identity. As she traced the bronze star's cold edges, a memory flickered. Her grandmother, Theodora, whispering years ago, "They'll try to cage you, Lila. Don't let them." That warning echoed now, a spark in the dark. But as Lila stood, her phone buzzed, a cryptic text from Beatrice, "Family emergency. Come downstairs. Now." A chill ran through her. Was this another dismissal, or something worse? She gripped the box, her resolve hardening. Whatever awaited, she wouldn't face it as their pawn. The weight of that cardboard box, Lila's junk, clutched in Captain Lila Hawthorne's arms was more than just medals and memories. It was a lifetime of being pushed into the shadows of her family's Georgetown brownstone, where every step echoed with the quiet cruelty of neglect. As she stood in the doorway of what was once her bedroom, Now Penelope's glittering shrine of designer excess. Lila's mind spiraled back to a childhood where her every triumph was dimmed by her family's obsession with her younger sister. The text from Beatrice, family emergency. Come downstairs. Now, buzzed in her pocket like a warning shot. But before facing whatever trap awaited, Lila's past demanded reckoning. It was a story of being erased note by note in a house that worshipped appearances over substance. Growing up, Lila was the quiet fire, the girl who taught herself Beethoven on the family's grand piano, her fingers weaving complex melodies while Penelope stumbled through basic scales. Yet Beatrice would clap for Penelope's off-key efforts, declaring to guests, she's got a poet's soul. Lila's performances, precise and passionate, were met with sighs. Not so loud, Lila, Beatrice would snap. You're upsetting your father's work. Penelope's summer trips to Florence for culture were a given. Lila was shipped to a coding boot camp in Vermont, practical, out of sight. The message was clear. Penelope was the star, Lila the stagehand. One memory cut deeper than the rest. At 15, Lila stood on a stage, a first-place medal for a national robotics competition pinned to her chest. Her project, a drone navigation system, had stunned the judges. She rushed home, heart pounding, to show Cornelius. He glanced at the medal, then back to his financial reports. Clever's fine, Lila, he said, voice flat, but a Hawthorne girl needs grace, not gears. That same week, Penelope, barely making the cheerleading squad, was celebrated with a catered dinner and Cornelius cracking open a rare bourbon. Lila sat at the table's edge, her medal in her pocket, invisible. Holidays were no different. For her 16th Christmas, Penelope unwrapped keys to a sleek Audi convertible, her squeals filling the house. Lila received a leather-bound financial planner, a cold reminder to secure her future elsewhere. The starkest wound came at a Thanksgiving when Lila was 17. She'd earned a scholarship to MIT, a golden ticket to a world beyond the brownstone's suffocating walls. She slid the letter across the table to Cornelius, her hands trembling with pride. He scanned it, frowned, and set it aside next to a half-eaten roll. Engineering, Lila? That's not a lady's path, he said, voice heavy with disappointment. We'll talk later. Later never came. Penelope's announcement of a minor role in a school play stole the night, Beatrice toasting her budding star with vintage champagne. Yet one figure stood apart, Theodora, Lila's grandmother. A woman of steel beneath her quiet grace. Theodora saw Lila's fire when no one else did. After that crushing Thanksgiving, she found Lila in the study, staring at a book she wasn't reading. Without a word, Theodora pressed a worn brass compass into Lila's palm. This family will try to box you in, she whispered, her eyes fierce. Use your mind as your map, your grit as your guide. Never let them dim you. Those words were Lila's lifeline, a beacon through years of being sidelined. In Syria, they'd fueled her, guiding her through the chaos of war. Now, standing in Penelope's shrine, they burned brighter than ever. The phone buzzed again. Another text from Beatrice, sharper now, don't keep us waiting. Lila's jaw tightened. She set the box down, her medals glinting like a challenge. Whatever family emergency awaited, it wasn't about love, it was about control. Theodora's compass, tucked in her pocket, felt heavier than the bronze star. Lila descended the stairs, her boots silent on the hardwood, ready to face the storm. But the echoes of her past, the years of being erased, weren't just memories. They were fuel for the fight she sensed brewing. Something was coming, and Lila wouldn't be caught off guard. The echoes of Theodora's words, use your mind as your map, your grit as your guide, carried Lila Hawthorne from the sterile opulence of her family's Georgetown brownstone to the scorched sands of Syria. As she descended the stairs, clutching the brass compass and bracing for Beatrice's cryptic family emergency, Lila's mind drifted to the place where she'd truly come alive. In the crucible of war, far from the suffocating expectations of her family, she'd forged a purpose that no one could erase. The memory of her time in Aleppo was a lifeline, a reminder of who she was beyond the cardboard box of Lila's junk. But the buzz of her phone, insistent and cold, hinted at a battle waiting below, one she'd faced with the same steel she'd honed overseas. In Syria, Lila was no Hawthorne heiress. She was Captain Hawthorne, an intelligence officer at a dusty forward operating base, where the air hummed with drone engines and the weight of lives rested on her decisions. Her world was a dimly lit command tent, screens flickering with satellite feeds and encrypted chatter. Charm, the currency of her family's DC elite, was useless here. Survival demanded precision, instinct, and a relentless trust in her own mind. Lila thrived in the chaos, reading truths in the silences, a hesitation in an informant's voice, a shadow on a grainy drone feed. Every choice she made could mean a squad returning whole or not at all. One night stood out, etched into her soul like a scar. A report crossed her desk, a supply convoy's route, vetted by a trusted source. The data was clean, too clean. A prickle of unease gnawed at her gut, a whisper of wrongness she couldn't pin down. Against protocol, Lila called the convoy commander, urging a last-minute reroute. Her commanding officer, a grizzled colonel, warned her, "If you're wrong, Hawthorne, you're done." Lila held her ground, Theodora's compass burning in her pocket. Hours later, word came. An IED had obliterated the original route, a crater where the convoy would have been. 3 soldiers lived because of her hunch. No medals followed, no toasts. Just a quiet nod from the colonel and the weight of lives saved, heavier and sweeter than any Georgetown gala. Back home, that victory felt like another world. A rare call to Penelope had proven it. Lila tried to share the gravity of her work, the lives hanging in the balance. Penelope laughed, light and dismissive. "God, Lila, that sounds exhausting. Come home. Theo's throwing a yacht party on the Chesapeake. That's the real stuff. The real stuff." To Penelope, reality was champagne and status. To Lila, it was the haunted eyes of a young private before his first patrol, the letters she wrote to families who'd never see their soldiers again. The chasm between them was vast, uncrossable. Before leaving Syria, Lila stood on the tarmac, the jagged peaks of the anti-Lebanon mountains cutting the horizon. She thought of her fallen comrades, their faces etched in her memory, and of her family cocooned in their glittering ignorance. Her hand rested on her uniform, the rough fabric a second skin. She made a silent vow, not to country, but to herself. She'd never let their world dim her light again. That oath, forged in the dust and heat, pulsed now as she reached the bottom of the brownstone stairs. The parlor door loomed, voices leaking through, Beatrice's clipped tones, Penelope's calculated sniffles. The family emergency wasn't a crisis. It was a stage, and Lila was walking into a script she hadn't read. Her fingers brushed the compass, Theodora's voice whispering, "Never let them dim you." Whatever lay beyond that door, Lila wasn't the girl they'd boxed away. She was a soldier, sharpened by war, and she'd face this ambush with the same clarity that saved lives in Syria. The door creaked open and the air shifted, thick, charged, like the moment before a detonation. The creak of the parlor door was a warning shot, but Captain Lila Hawthorne stepped through it with the steady calm of a soldier entering a hot zone. The air in her family's Georgetown brownstone was thick, not with warmth, but with the calculated tension of a stage play. Her mother, Beatrice, sat on a velvet settee, her hand resting protectively on Penelope's shoulder. Penelope, curled into herself, let out delicate, shuddering sobs, her silk dress artfully crumpled. Theo, Lila's fiancé, perched on an armchair, his face pale, eyes hollow, like a man caught in a blast aftermath. A DC police officer, a familiar face from Cornelius's country club, stood by the fireplace, his notebook open, but his posture too relaxed for an official call. The scene was a masterpiece of manipulation, and Lila, fresh from Syria's raw truths, saw it for what it was, a trap designed to bury her. Beatrice's eyes met Lila's, sharp with accusation. "Lila, thank God you're here," she said, her voice a practiced blend of relief and reproach. The officer nodded. "Evening, Miss Hawthorne. Just taking a statement about a domestic issue." Penelope's sobs grew louder, her words trembling. "I woke up and Theo was in my room. I was so scared." She didn't say assault, but her flinch, her quivering lip, painted a damning picture. Lila's heart lurched, not from belief, but from the betrayal's audacity. She turned to Theo, searching for the man who'd sent her love letters in Aleppo, promises of a shared future. "Theo, what happened?" she asked, her voice steady, cutting through the theatrics. Beatrice shot up, her movement a whip crack. "Lila, how dare you interrogate your sister in her pain?" she snapped, framing Lila's question as cruelty. The officer's gaze hardened, marking Lila as the problem. Theo finally looked up, his eyes not pleading but cold, calculating. "Lila," he said, voice low, "you've always resented Penelope's place in this family. Did you plan this?" The question wasn't a question. It was a verdict, a blade twisted in her chest. Theo, her anchor through war's chaos, had chosen their side, accusing her of orchestrating this lie. The room spun, the weight of their betrayal heavier than any bomb's blast. Lila's intelligence training kicked in, grounding her. She saw the script, Penelope's tears, Beatrice's indignation, the officer's casual dismissal. It was a performance to discredit her, to paint her as the unstable veteran. The officer closed his notebook. "Since Miss Penelope isn't pressing charges, we'll call it a disturbance," he said, tipping his hat to Beatrice before leaving. The door's click sealed the silence, thick with unspoken poison. Lila held Theo's gaze, searching for a flicker of the man she'd loved. There was none, only fear for himself, a coward's mask. Beatrice's smug triumph and Penelope's tearless victory burned into Lila's soul. This wasn't just rejection, it was a calculated strike to erase her from the family's legacy, to protect Hawthorne Security Solutions, their empire. She didn't scream or cry. Lila's voice, when she spoke, was cold steel. "You think this breaks me?" She turned, her boots silent on the hardwood, and climbed the stairs to the guest room, her only refuge now. Her duffel bag sat untouched, a soldier's lifeline. She grabbed it, her fingers brushing Theodora's compass, its weight a reminder of her grandmother's warning. Never let them dim you. As she descended, the parlor was frozen, her family like statues in a twisted tableau. Lila walked out the front door, the night air sharp against her skin. This wasn't retreat, it was strategy. She'd learned in Syria to choose her battles, and this one was far from over. Her phone buzzed again, Beatrice, demanding her return. Lila ignored it, her Jeep's engine roaring to life. Somewhere out there, allies waited, and a reckoning was brewing. The roar of Lila Hawthorne's Jeep cut through the DC night, carrying her away from the Georgetown brownstone's poison and into the gritty embrace of a veteran's bar called The Last Stand. The betrayal, Penelope's crocodile tears, Theo's cowardly accusation, Beatrice's orchestrated trap, burned in her chest, but Lila wasn't broken. She was a soldier, trained to pivot under fire, and the weight of Theodora's compass in her pocket whispered of a fight yet to come. The bar's dim glow, heavy with the scent of whiskey and worn leather, felt more like home than her family's sterile mansion ever had. Here, among scarred tables and quiet nods, she'd find the first spark of her counterstrike. Lila slid into a booth across from Jasper Wrench Malone, a former cyber warfare specialist from her Syrian unit. Built like a linebacker, with eyes that missed nothing, Jasper nursed a bourbon, his gaze locking onto Lila's trembling hands. "You look like you've been through a meat grinder," he said, voice low, no sugarcoating. Lila let it all spill. The uniform treated like trash, Penelope's smug janitor, Jab, the staged parlor drama where Theo accused her of sabotage. Jasper didn't flinch, just listened, his slow nods a lifeline in the storm. When she finished, he leaned back, ice clinking in his glass. Your family's a nest of vipers, Lila. You need a snake charmer. Jasper's words weren't just empathy, they were a call to arms. He leaned forward, his voice a gravelly promise. Everything they do, deals, lies, dirty laundry, it's all digital. I can dig it up. You're not fighting alone. Lila's resolve hardened. This was no longer about surviving her family's betrayal, but dismantling their game. Jasper's skills, honed in Warzone's cracking enemy networks, were her weapon now. But they needed more. A general to navigate DC's legal battlefield. Lila pulled out her phone, scrolling to a name Theodora had circled in her contacts. Abigail Voss, a DC lawyer feared as the guillotine for slicing through untouchable empires. They set up shop in a nondescript corporate apartment, a digital war room stripped of any Hawthorne trace. Jasper's laptops hummed, screens casting a blue glow as his fingers danced across keyboards, probing Hawthorne Security Solutions servers. Lila watched, her intelligence training syncing with his cyber tactics. The first hits came fast, Theo's corporate card records, dripping with charges for diamond necklaces and weekend suites for Penelope, all funneled through company accounts. Then, a thread of emails between Beatrice and board members laced with coded talk of restructuring and image alignment. It was a quiet coup, planned to shove Lila out of the family legacy. Each discovery was a jolt, confirming the betrayal wasn't just personal, it was corporate warfare. Lila's phone buzzed, another text from Beatrice. This isn't over. Return now. Lila deleted it, her jaw tight. Jasper caught her eye. They're circling, Lila. Vipers strike when cornered. She nodded, Theodora's compass a steady weight. Abigail Voss's number glowed on her screen, a beacon in the dark. Lila pressed call, her voice calm but ironclad. Ms. Voss, I need you to take down a dynasty. The line crackled with Voss's reply. Captain Hawthorne, I've been waiting for a fight like this. As Jasper's screens flickered with more data, shell companies, hidden transfers, Lila felt the shift. This wasn't just about clearing her name. It was about exposing a fortress built on lies. The war room hummed with purpose, each keystroke a step toward justice. But a shadow lingered. What else had her family buried? Theodora's compass seemed to pulse, hinting at secrets yet uncovered, secrets that could tip the scales. Lila leaned over Jasper's shoulder, the glow of the screens reflecting in her eyes. The fight was on, and she was ready to strike. The hum of Jasper Malone's laptops filled the sterile apartment, a digital heartbeat in the war room where Captain Lila Hawthorne was forging her counterstrike against her family's betrayal. The Georgetown Brownstone stage drama, Penelope's fake tears, Theo's gutless accusation, Beatrice's cold manipulation, had left Lila reeling but not broken. Theodora's compass, heavy in her pocket, was a silent vow to fight back. As Jasper peeled back layers of Hawthorne Security Solutions' digital facade, unearthing Theo's lavish gifts to Penelope and coded emails plotting a corporate coup, Lila felt the tide turning. But the real weapon, the one that could shatter her family's empire, was about to surface from an unexpected source, her grandmother's hidden legacy. Jasper's screens glowed with data, each file a brick pulled from the Hawthorne fortress. Lila's phone sat silent now, Beatrice's demanding texts ignored, but the weight of her family's lies pressed harder. Abigail Voss, the lawyer known as the Guillotine, was already drafting legal salvos, her voice crackling through a late-night call. We need something undeniable, Lila. A kill shot. Lila's mind churned, replaying Theodora's words. Never let them dim you. Her grandmother had always seen through the family's gloss, her quiet strength a beacon. Could she have left more than a compass? A tip from Abigail's network sparked a breakthrough. Jasper, following a hunch, hacked into the access logs of a private bank in DuPont Circle. Theodora's safety deposit box had been opened once since her death by Beatrice. But a second box, registered solely to Lila, lay untouched, its existence a secret buried in Theodora's will. Lila's pulse quickened as she drove to the bank, the compass in her pocket a talisman. The vault's cold air hit her like a warning, but the small metal box, engraved with her name, felt like a promise. Inside, nestled among old deeds, was a sleek external hard drive. Taped to it, a note in Theodora's spidery script. John 8 verse 32, "The truth shall set you free." Back in the war room, Lila's hands trembled as Jasper plugged in the drive. A password prompt blinked, the hint echoing Theodora's note. Truth. Lila typed Veritas, and the drive unlocked, revealing a digital arsenal. Theodora, the quiet matriarch, had been a spy master. Scanned emails, audio files from the Brownstones' landline, keylogger data from the family computer. It was a meticulous record of the Hawthorns' rot. One folder, labeled Endgame, held a video from a hidden camera in Theodora's study, time-stamped days before Lila's return. Beatrice and Penelope sat over tea, their voices chillingly casual. "Will this little drama with Theo really work, Mother?" Penelope asked, smirking. Beatrice's reply was ice-cold, with a touch of sedative in his drink and your tears. "Darling, we can bend anyone, even your father." Lila's breath caught, the video a grenade in her hands. This wasn't just evidence. It was proof of a conspiracy to frame Theo and destroy Lila's credibility, all to secure Penelope's place in the family empire. Jasper's eyes widened. "Your grandmother was a ghost in their machine," he said, voice low with awe. Lila nodded, Theodora's compass burning against her palm. This drive was her inheritance, not of wealth, but of truth, a weapon to dismantle the lies that had caged her. Abigail's voice echoed in her mind, a kill shot. This was it. As Jasper copied the files, Lila's resolve crystallized. The Brownstones' parlor, the boardroom of Hawthorne Security Solutions, the entire glittering facade of her family's power. It was all vulnerable now. But a shadow lingered. Beatrice's text had stopped, an eerie silence signaling a new move. The vipers were coiled, and Lila knew they'd strike soon. She glanced at Jasper, his screens alight with their next steps. Theodora's arsenal had armed her, but the battlefield awaited. The compass spun in her mind, pointing to a reckoning she was ready to deliver. The glow of Jasper Malone's screens faded as Captain Lila Hawthorne gripped Theodora's compass, its weight anchoring her to the truth now pulsing from her grandmother's hidden hard drive. The video of Beatrice and Penelope plotting to frame Theo, their cold laughter exposing a conspiracy to erase Lila, was a loaded weapon. The Georgetown Brownstones' betrayal, Penelope's staged tears, Theo's accusing eyes, Beatrice's calculated trap, had pushed Lila to the edge, but she was no longer the prey. With Abigail Voss, the lawyer known as the Guillotine, by her side, Lila was ready to storm the heart of her family's empire, the boardroom of Hawthorne Security Solutions. The Vipers thought they'd cornered her, but they'd miscalculated. The hunter was now the hunted. Abigail's intelligence network had intercepted a memo. Beatrice and Cornelius were convening an emergency board meeting, cloaked in vague corporate jargon, but clear in intent, to paint Lila as a broken veteran, her accusations the ravings of PTSD. The boardroom, a fortress of glass and steel overlooking DC skyline, was their sanctuary, where power deals were sealed over aged scotch. Lila and Abigail stood outside its heavy oak doors, the muffled hum of Beatrice's voice leaking through. "It pains me to say," Beatrice was saying, her tone dripping with rehearsed sorrow, but Lila's time in Syria has left her unstable. Her claims are delusions, nothing more. The board's murmurs of sympathy were a chorus of gullible fools swallowing her lie. Abigail's lips curled into a predator's smile. "Let's rewrite their script," she whispered. They pushed open the doors and the room froze. A dozen board members, titans of the defense industry, swiveled to face them. Beatrice's face drained of color, her mask of maternal grief cracking. Cornelius shot to his feet, his voice booming. "Lila, what is this? You have no place here." Abigail stepped forward, her power suit sharp as a blade, and slammed a leather dossier onto the table. "As executor of Theodora Hawthorne's estate," she said, voice cutting like a scalpel, "and proxy for the largest shareholder, Captain Hawthorne has every right." We have additions to your agenda. The board's eyes darted between Abigail's dossier and Lila, who moved to the head of the table with a soldier's precision. She didn't glance at Beatrice, Cornelius, Penelope, or Theo. Their faces a tableau of shock and dread. Instead, she plugged Theodora's hard drive into the boardroom's sleek projector, the screen flickering to life. "Gentlemen," Lila said, her voice quiet but commanding, a brief intelligence report. The first file played, an audio of Beatrice bullying Theodora for share control, her tone venomous. Murmurs rippled through the room. Next, a grainy video showed Penelope and Theo at a restaurant, Penelope laughing about deleting Lila's job off her email from a rival firm, while Theo smirked, complicit. Then, the kill shot, Theodora's study video. Penelope's voice, smug and bored. "Will this little drama with Theo really work, mother?" Beatrice's reply, cold as a grave. "With a sedative in his drink and your tears, darling, we can bend anyone." The room gasped, a collective choke of horror. Penelope's sob was real this time, raw and panicked. Theo stared at her, his face collapsing into betrayal. Cornelius, the stoic patriarch, gaped at Beatrice, seeing not his wife but a puppeteer. The board's sympathy curdled into disgust, their gazes like daggers. Lila clicked the remote, the screen going black. She let the silence stretch, heavy with the wreckage of her family's lies. Then, meeting each board member's eyes, she asked, "Any questions?" The quiet was deafening, a dynasty fracturing under the weight of truth. Lila and Abigail walked out, leaving the board to choke on the debris. The fight wasn't over, retaliation was certain, but Lila felt Theodora's compass pulse, guiding her forward. The Vipers had struck, but she'd struck harder. Now, the world would see their venom for what it was. The boardroom silence still echoed in Lila Hawthorne's ears as she drove away from D.C., the glittering skyline of her family's power fading in her rearview mirror. The showdown at Hawthorne Security Solutions, where Theodora's hard drive exposed Beatrice's and Penelope's conspiracy, had shattered their empire. The board's swift suspension of Beatrice, Cornelius, and Theo, coupled with a plummeting stock price splashed across the Washington Post, marked the end of their reign. But for Lila, the victory wasn't in their fall. It was in what she built from the ashes. Theodora's compass, nestled in her pocket, guided her west to a place where wounds could heal and purpose could bloom, a sanctuary reborn in the rolling hills of Virginia's Blue Ridge. Lila's first act was severance. She stood in her sparse D.C. apartment, the city's lights cold beyond the window, and dialed Beatrice. "This ends now," Lila said, her voice steady as steel. "No calls, no texts, no games. We're done." Beatrice's reply was a venomous whisper. "You were always so cold, Lila." Lila's response was calm, final, "No, mother. I was just a survivor." One by one, she blocked their numbers, Beatrice, Cornelius, Penelope, Theo, a digital guillotine slicing away their hold. Theo's desperate knock came days later, his suit rumpled, his eyes pleading. "I was manipulated, Lila. I still love you." Lila looked at him, seeing not love but ambition. "You loved what I could do for you," she said softly, closing the door. Penelope's text, a venomous rant, met the same fate, deleted, unanswered. With Abigail Voss handling Theodora's estate, Lila sold the Georgetown brownstone and liquidated her shares in Hawthorne Security Solutions. The money was a tool, not a tether. She drove to Theodora's old farm in the Blue Ridge, a humble cabin surrounded by fields of wild sage. The air, sharp with the herb's earthy scent, washed over her, cleansing the last of DC's poison. Lila walked the rows, her fingers brushing sage leaves, Theodora's voice echoing. "Sage doesn't demand attention, but it heals." This was her true inheritance, not wealth, but resilience. Lila poured her resources into the Theodora Initiative, a foundation to fund female veterans starting businesses. Its first grant went to a former Navy SEAL, Clara Boone, who launched a cybersecurity firm. Clara's email arrived one morning as Lila sat on the cabin's porch. "Captain Hawthorne, Your story gave me the guts to walk away from a soul-crushing job. You showed me we're defined by how we rise. Tears fell, not from pain, but from connection. Lila's war, fought in Syria and DC, had become a beacon for others. A Forbes cover arrived, featuring Lila under the headline, From Battlefield to Boardroom, Lila Hawthorne's Mission. Jasper Malone, sipping coffee on the porch, grinned. From soldier to sage farmer. Huh? Lila smiled, her first real one in years. Just a gardener wrench. The sage field stretched before them, a sea of green under a pink dawn. The scars of her past, Penelope's cruelty, Theo's betrayal, remained, but they were no longer wounds. They were proof of her strength, of a life she'd carved from ruin. Lila Hawthorne's journey wasn't just about tearing down a fortress of lies. It was about planting something true in its place. The sage fields of her grandmother's farm became her sanctuary, each leaf a testament to resilience. The Theodora Initiative grew, empowering women who'd faced their own battles to build futures unshackled by others' expectations. Lila's peace wasn't loud or showy. It was the quiet hum of a life reclaimed, rooted in purpose. Her story reminds us that our scars, though etched deep, can guide us to new dawns. We all carry moments where we've had to choose ourselves over someone else's darkness. Lila's victory was in her garden, her legacy in the lives she lifted. What's your moment of rising? When did you claim your own light? If Lila's story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your own moment of courage in the comments. We're here to celebrate every step you've taken. Subscribe to Chosen Revenge for more stories of strength and triumph, and join us as we uncover the power in rewriting our own endings.